So today I'm delighted to welcome Stuart Mason, who is the author of two books. His first book, How to Wreck Your Business, was an Amazon bestseller, I believe, Stuart, wasn't it?
Number one bestseller, Paul. Number one. Don't
Um,
take it away from me.
yeah, I certainly wouldn't take that away from you. And then he's also written his second book, which is called Go to Sell, which you'll see a copy here. Um, for those of you who know me, know that I love books, and my son mentioned to me earlier this week that I've probably got 50 books on my desk, 50 business books on my desk, and I've probably got 500 plus business books in my office, and I've actually had to double stack my books on my bookshelf to get them all in there. So I love books and I love talking to people, and I'm delighted that Stuart has agreed today to talk to us about his book. So when I read your book, Stuart, I think one of the interesting stats that I read was that only 20% of people that advertise their business for sale sell the business. So there's 80% of people that advertise or look to sell their business that can't sell their business. And for most of the people in the business community, their business is seen as their pension pot. And if they can't sell it, what does that mean about their ability to meet their expenditure and to live in retirement, to meet their costs?
Correct.
So, first thing, Stuart, is that what I'd like to do is understand a little bit about your journey, about how you arrived here today. And I know your first book mentions the helicopter, but I don't think you came in a helicopter to today, did you? And
Uh,
basically how you arrived at where you are today, please.
okay. Right. Sit down, grab a coffee. This might take a while. So a bit about me, a bit about the background. Okay, we'll go back to the RAF then. So, I'm a former military air traffic controller, hence the headset. Once you get these stuck on, you kind of get the bloody things off. So I'm a former military air traffic controller, and I felt that there wasn't enough stress in my life being an air traffic controller for the military. So I left the RAF and started my own printing business. Well, let me tell you, that soon took care of the stress. But that business went on to become the the largest chain of independent print centres in the country. This business was flying, literally. And this is where, you referenced the helicopter and the Aston Martin, all these um, toys came, well, sorry, no, the legitimate business expenses all came from the wealth the business was actually creating. And that business was punching way above its weight, right? And you don't get to build a business like that by being a dummy, right? So there was a lot of innovation there that was driving that business, but it still failed in its 20th birthday. That business failed in its 20th birthday. And I can identify 8 fundamental avoidable mistakes that led up to that business failing, and they're all avoidable. So I wrote a book about it, How to Write Your Business. I think I've got one here. There we go, as if by magic. How to Write Your Business, because I'm good
Now,
at it. Snap. So that went on to be an Amazon number one bestseller because it shares the story. That was the first book. I then joined one of our competitors, a company called Tradeprint, and did some pretty decent work there. I was their production and commercial director. I mean, we grew that business just over 10 million, but with substantial net profits, unheard of in the printing industry. And as a result of that, that business was acquired by a company called Simpress. Now, you might know Simpress by their trading name of Vistaprint. So overnight, I became a plant director of the largest print group on the planet. And I thought this was going to be great, but corporate life wasn't for me. So I left and then evolved into business coaching. But I was always fascinated, right, by the levers, all the different levers and buttons you can press that influence A, if a business will sell, B, if a business won't sell, and how it affects the valuation. Because trade print sold for well over its value, what I would consider its valuation. It sold for 21 million. Now I'm not giving anything away. All this is in the public domain. It sold for 21 million. A 10 million pound business making a 2 million net profit sold for 21 million. And that really started my fascination with business acquisitions and business selling, and more importantly, preparing businesses for sale. Because going back to my business, it was called the Ink Shop. going back to my business, it was not sellable. Multi-million pound business, seriously decent profits, massive property portfolio, but other than the asset value, that business was not sellable, right? And this is what Paul alluded to at the start. 80% of businesses listed for sale don't sell, never sell. And Paul, it's actually worse with small and micro businesses because that figure takes into account all businesses. And at the larger end of the scale, those percentages are much lower. So we don't have the exact figures, but it's 85 to 90% of small and micro businesses never sell. Right? It's horrific. And that then led me to write that next book, Go to Sell. And Go to Sell, as the cover suggests, it's raw and honest, right? It's abrupt, it's rude, right? If you're easily offended, go and get the beano or something. But it's about exit planning for your business. So does that answer your question, Paul?
Yeah, it does, and I think your raw style is an honest style. It's an honest approach. It's you, and also what it does is some of the tactics, maybe in terms of about being rude, is possibly what I would call a shock and awe tactic, isn't it? It's trying to force people to sit up and take notice and realise that actually it's their business. They can do what they want with it, but obviously, if they want to receive a capital sum on selling the business, if it is saleable, then there's certain things that they could do. And um, your book alludes to the various steps that an owner of a business can do to actually make it more sellable and also
Yep.
ultimately increase that value. And would you like
Yes.
to share those steps with us today?
So yeah, I mean every business is different, Paul, right? Um, and what I would say is the steps is maybe more how you get started, right? Um, because I think the problem a lot of business owners have got is they tend to overvalue. They overvalue, underestimate, and oversimplify the whole process. So I would say the first step is really to get some form of valuation done. And we can help with that, right? We've got two valuations we can offer. One's a kind of express instant valuation, and that'll give you a very, very generic figure. And then we can go on to do the full valuation, which takes about an hour, right? And that's going to let you see if you're in the ballpark, because you would be amazed and actually, to be honest with you, disappointed that some business owners think their business is worth millions, right? And it's nowhere near it. So we need to do the reality check first. And then I always say, and bear in mind, there's no charge for any of this. This is just a valuation at this point. Then let's jump on a call because I have just done a post literally today about EBITDA, right? And EBITDA to me, for a business looking to small business looking to sell, is a bloody fairy tale. It is a number, right? It tells you nothing about the business, Paul, right? You could have a business, you could have two businesses rather, and both have a 200,000 EBITDA, right? One is completely desirable, completely sellable, possibly for well above industry averages with a multiple. And the other one, you couldn't give it away in a lucky bag with a fizzy sweetie and a whistle, right? Same business, same turnover, same EBITDA, but it's all down to how reliant the business is on you. What's your customer concentration like? What about recurring revenues, right? Something that crops in as well is the valuation of machines. If you've got like a printing business, for example, and the machines are old and they're tired, they've not been serviced, there's a load of factors come into play on the sellability of the business. And we need to identify these early on. Because there's no point going into the bones of getting a business ready for sale if we've not actually identified what are the big tripping points at the start. So to get started, dead simple, Paul. Do the free instant valuation. That's 11 questions, and two of those questions are your name, your email. This is easy stuff. Then we'll do the full valuation. Allow an hour for that. And then allow another hour to work with me and go through it, right? And then, and only then, will you be able to have a position to say, yeah, let's go to the next step. I've got some work to do here, or we're nowhere near it, whatever. But to me, Paul, that's where you start. Got to start at the beginning.
And I think for me, it's almost akin to selling a house, isn't it? That basically we know that we can maximize the value of selling our house if we do certain things.
Correct.
And that might be because we've got too much furniture in the room. That might be because it's dark. That might be whatever it is because it needs a lick of paint. But what we're actually
Correct.
talking about in terms of a business is a certain fairly straightforward, easy wins for us, which aren't that expensive in terms of time or money for us to do, which will
Yes.
actually help that. Because I
It's a
think,
good analogy, Paul, to use the house scenario because I always say to business owners, you've got two choices when you're selling your business. You can sell it like a house or you can sell it like a car. And they go, oh, what do you mean by that? Well, when you're selling your house, you have a starting price and it's offers over, right? And when you're selling your car, it's a sticker price and it's usually best offer. So it's always offers under. How do you want to sell your business?
and I think the question that most people need to understand is that if, like Michael Gerber says, a lot of people have just got a job, they haven't really got a business.
Correct.
And it's how do we get over that to actually explain to business owners that there's certain foundations, certain steps that they can do it in place. And I think for me, one of the things about selling a business is potentially is to work out when we want to sell it, to set a date, and then we work backwards in the steps of things that we need to do. And I
Yes.
think in your book you give 3 or 4 reasons why people sell businesses. And I think the last one, step number 4, which you might want to explain the other 3 as well as number 4, was a little bit sort of illuminating for me because it sort of had sentiments that I've seen with other people. So the 3 or 4 reasons that people give to sell their business.
So I've actually wrote down some notes here on this, right? 3 or 4 reasons why people sell their business, right? So the obvious one is retirement, right? Um, but there's a lot of business owners are actually selling their business because they're stressed to the eyeballs, right? This is the first challenging question. For those of you that are thinking about selling your business, are you selling the business or are you trying to sell what the business has become, right? Let me explain about that. Because if you're selling the business because you're stressed to the eyeballs, can't get holidays, sleepless nights, stress, pressure, family pressures, all the bad things, then that business ain't sellable in a million years. So what I've referred to here, Paul, is what I call push and pull factors, right? Push and pull factors. And what the push factors are little things that are pushing you out of the business. All the bad things that I've just mentioned, right? Stress, hassle, maybe some health issues, not getting to sleep at night, no holidays, not getting the money you want, all the bad things that are literally pushing you out of the business. That's a big reason why people sell their business. It's a big reason why people try to sell their business because nobody's buying that shit, right? They're not buying a business, they're buying a job. Then we look at pull factors, right? These are the good things. These are the things that are literally pulling you, luring you out the business. Retirement, spending more time with the family, maybe other business interests, right? So you've got a business that's well run, it's well systemized, it runs without you, it's all the nice things and it's pull factors. So where are you? It's usually one or the other, right? Pull factors, you'll sell your business all day long because you've proved the business can run without you and build up a nice lifestyle. Push factors is the exact opposite, right? You're not selling what the business is, you're selling what the business has become. There's another thing we're seeing quite interestingly as well, from a buying point of view, it's worth mentioning here, is people bang on about lifestyle businesses. Right, if you watch Dragon's Den, which I despise, I've got to be honest, but when you watch Dragon's Den, they refer to, oh, this is a lifestyle business, as if it's something bad. Every business should be a lifestyle business. Whether it's turning over 100K or 100 million, Every business should be a lifestyle business for us, right? And I'm starting to see a lot of these lifestyle businesses being highly desirable, right? So these are one man band, one person bands, single owner businesses. And they're starting to become highly desirable because we're seeing a lot of people now coming out of corporate life. They're sick of the meetings, they're sick of the endless travel, they're sick of corporate bullshit. Or they're, people that are maybe coming out of industries like teaching, they've had enough of this. And they're looking for a lifestyle business that allows them to run their life, not their business, not just their business, right? Enjoy their life. They're perhaps in their more mature years, but more important, a business that aligns with their core values. So we're seeing a lot of buyers now looking for lifestyle businesses, which I think is fantastic because, like I say, every business is a lifestyle business. So there's some considerations and some reasons why people sell your business. Does that answer your question, Paul?
It does, and I think being based in Cornwall as I am, we obviously see a lot of seasonal businesses that people work hard sort of between March and September, and then have the winter off or go to sunnier climes to recuperate and for some sunshine. Um, but I think the fourth reason was one that really hit home to me was that some people can't be bothered anymore. They throw in the towel. They've had enough. The
Yeah,
business has been a complete drain for them in that they're not enjoying themselves. They're dealing from one crisis to the next. They've got staff issues, they've got supplier issues, cash flow issues, and they haven't really sorted out the business. And I think a lot of people, if we look back, some people went into the business with the wrong expectations, that they
yeah.
thought it was going
Oh,
to be golden
that's an
goose.
interesting question there, Paul. Did they go into the business with the wrong expectations? They probably didn't. That would probably come later. Because I think we all go into business with these grand ideas of being the next Elon Musk or having a fantastic lifestyle, etc. Um, what tends to happen though is the rigors of business then take over and it just becomes a grunge, it just becomes a total nightmare. And to be brutally honest, I don't really talk about this in my book, but Paul, that's where I was. Right. I was once described as the most miserable bastard with a supercar, right? Because I had this massive printing business, right, with an Aston Martin sitting outside, right? And I hated every minute of it. The business was absolutely killing me. And that's what I mean by it's not sellable. And this is where the whole thing about business exit fascinates me, right? Because this is what I call the business exit paradox. You've got this unsellable business, right? So you think, right, okay, I need to sell my business. I'm going to give myself 2 years, right? Because we need to be realistic in time frames here. I'm going to give myself 2 years to fix this business so that it's less reliant on me, so that we have got a good diverse customer spread, so that we've got our finances in order and all the other things that we've got to do to make this business sellable. And then you get all that done over that couple of years, and you're sitting back going, hang on a minute, this business works well. This business is enjoyable. This business runs without me. I can take holidays now. I can go and do the school stuff with the kids. I can have weekends off. I can go golf on a Friday afternoon if I want. In other words, you've now got the business that you should have had 10 years ago. And this is why we call it the business exit paradox, because you build a business that's now sellable, but now you don't need to sell it.
No, and I suppose as well, one of the other factors that we would need to consider is that given the capital value of the business and the profits it's making as a return on capital, that's probably that you more than you're going to get than by selling the business and putting the money in a savings account and living off the interest. And I think there's an
Potentially.
argument there, isn't there, that if you are at that stage, that if your team can run without you, if the business can run without you, an advantage in actually keeping that business and using that money to fund the lifestyle that you've missed in effect because you've been building the business.
Yes,
And I think
100%.
for me, what are some of the ways that people can, in your opinion, maximize the value of their business?
Maximize the value. But I tell you what, let's look at this at two ways, Paul, right? We'll look at We'll look at ways where they can maximize the value, but we'll also look at ways where they can devalue the business as well, because the two are very much linked, right? And this is why go to sell was created. So let's look at a few things that you can do first, right? Number one, and you'll like this one, Paul. I'm not just saying this because I'm on the call with you. This is fact. Number one, to maximize the value of your business is to tidy up the financials, right? Buyers like to see tidy financials, and people get all bent out of shape about making massive profits here. That's not what tidy financials is. Tidy financials is everything being right. There's no unexplained entries in your bookkeeping. There's no business expenses like golf memberships and all these kind of things being sneaked through. We're talking tidy, well presented, accurate, legal finances. Predictable profit obviously is there, linked in with that. If you've got a predictable profit, buyers love that. But they also like to see growth potential as well, right? And this is something I'm really, really big on, right? We've got to be clear what growth potential is. It's the realistic opportunities for your business moving forward, not pie in the sky figures that you make up. Taking your 100 grand business, oh, it could be £1 million business. Yeah, of course it could. Because with growth potential, we're going to show the potential buyer exactly how you achieve that. So tidy financials, predictable profit, and growth potential are all linked together. That's number one. Number two, and this is huge, is recurring revenue streams, right? Now we've got to be clear what recurring revenue is. Recurring revenue is not just regular customers that come back 2 or 3 times, right? That's reoccurring revenue. Now, that's still good, don't get me wrong, as are contracts and whatnot. But to really get the value of your business up, we're talking about recurring revenues, like memberships schemes, subscriptions. So, dog food businesses are great for this. You're paying X hundred quid a month, whatever it might be. I've got a big dog, that's why it's so much. Right. And it's recurring revenue. Every month, bang, bang, bang. Buyers love that because it's predictable business and it's sticky customers. So that's a great one for increasing the value of your business. Maximizer number three, though, has got to be the business that runs without you. I cannot stress that enough. If decisions have got to come through you, you become the bottleneck, right? And you actually become, in fact, I was there. This was me, right? I was that soldier. I went from being my business's biggest asset to becoming its biggest liability because I was a control freak, or maybe just a freak, and everything came through me, and nothing devalues a business more than that, right? So a business that runs without you is maximizer number three. All these things start to add value. Now let's flip that and see what seriously devalues the business. And I've mentioned, or I'm going to mention rather, three here that I have seen literally in the last 10 days, right? One deal fell apart very early on, right? Number one's owner dependency. So the business runs without you. If it doesn't run well without you, it's owner dependency. It's a killer because when a buyer sees that, you're just looking, hang on a minute, take Paul away, there is no business. Take Paul away, we probably lose half the customers. Take Paul away, the business just stops. Take Paul away, my hassles multiply by a factor of 100. I'm not buying this business. Owner dependency is an outright killer. Number two, and this is where this deal went pear-shaped, customer concentration, right? Now, there's no right or wrong here, but in reality, in the ideal world that we don't live in, but in the ideal world, you're looking to have a very diverse customer concentration. And I always say 10, 12% maximum of your turnover from one customer. Because if you lose that customer, right, not because you're bad, right, but they might go bust, they might get bought over. Somebody else might come in with better service, better prices. There's no guarantees in life. You might guarantee buy a toaster. So customer concentration is really important, right? This business had 67% of its turnover coming from one customer. And that one,
67%.
67%. Now, this is a £2 million business. 67% coming from one customer, and that one customer was going through an acquisition. Right? I'm at, I won't, I was going to say the F word there, right? Caught myself just in time. I'm at,
Flip, flip,
I'm flip,
flip.
flip. That's exactly that. I'm like, for flip's sake, right? It was a deal breaker, right? Now, if you've got one customer giving you a vast amount of turnover for your business, you don't phone them up and say, "Oh, look, Stuart told me that's too much. I need to cut you back." You obviously don't do that. But what you need to do over time is dilute that, right? Because if you lose a customer at, say, 10 or 15% of turnover, that's going to hurt. If you lose a customer that's giving you 20, 25% of your turnover, you're probably laying people off and scaling back your business. If you lose a customer that's giving you maybe 50 or 60% of your turnover, you're out of business, right? So customer concentration is huge for a buyer. And they will ask that very, very early on. And
And in
then,
your example, Stuart, the best person to buy that business was that customer, wasn't it?
yeah.
Because
So that was
his
that
supply
business was
chain.
massively profitable, Paul. Still is, right? It just ain't sellable. So
Mm.
the business owner now is trading over a period of time trying to bring in more business. But the phrase we use, and it's horrible, it's a cross your finger strategy that client, when they themselves are acquired, still continue to use them. This was a huge wake up call. I use a phrase that I heard quite, I can't even remember who said this. I think it was Brad Sugars. You become fat and lazy, right? And I like that phrase, but okay, so I've got a couple of extra pounds. But fat and lazy, it's so easy to fall into that trap. The good times are there, things are great, there's cash coming in. You sit back, you fold the arms, and you become fat and lazy. That always bites you in the ass. The
The
next
phrase
one,
that the phrase that I use is from Thomas the Tank when my children used to watch Thomas the Tank was lazy and slack.
it's the same thing, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And then number three, Paul, is the opposite of what we talked about with tidy financials is untidy financials, right? And like I say, it's not necessarily the amount of profit. It's all the it's all the little things that are getting put through that that and we've all done it. I mean, I put a helicopter through my business for goodness sake, claimed the VAT back on it, all signed off on it, all signed off, right? But it's a big red flag to a buyer if they look at the fine and there's entries that can't be explained and there's stuff put through for the business and there's you know I've seen it all. What's this? Oh, that's the gardener, but you're in an industrial estate. Ah, it's for the house. Okay, I and these are the kind of things because remember, if it's a share deal, the buyer's potentially buying that liability. If it's an asset deal, they don't give a shit. If it's a share deal, they're potentially buying that liability, right? So this is why untidy financials is number three in the potential walk away. So there's three value adds and three devalues.
Because you also mention in your book about the three types of buyers, and I think you also talk about £1 Charlies, don't you?
Yes, yes, yes. Now, £1 Charlie's is an interesting one because they can actually work, Paul. Right. So what a £1 Charlie is a potential buyer that comes along, right? And these what you've got to remember is these people have gone on courses how to I'm not even going to say buy businesses because they don't buy the business. I'm going to be quite brutal here and say take your business, right? There's a guy on LinkedIn called Clinton Lee, spelled with a C, Clinton Lee. Clinton was the guy that first coined this phrase, £1 Charlies, and he's very good at identifying, explaining what they do. But they go on courses and they pay tens of thousands of pounds to go on these courses. So they come across very slick and very professional, and they'll use really nice phrases like vendor finance and deferred consideration. It sounds all very professional, but what it basically means is they're going in, taking your business, not paying you anything, And deferred consideration is I'll pay you later if the business makes money. Vendor finance, same, it doesn't work. It very rarely works. So you're basically giving over your business on the hope that this person coming in is going to turn the business around, flip it, and you're going to get your money. But you've lost control of your business.
Yeah, and the
One,
problem with it is you're betting on someone else making money.
it's
And
worse than that, Paul. You're betting somebody else making money, but you've not got any control then of your business because they're making decisions. This has got to be avoided at all costs, in my opinion. And what we see, Paul, and this is where it becomes a real problem, is we're now starting to see because 80% of businesses don't sell, because people have been listing their business for 2, 3, 4 years, because they're not selling, because they're getting frustrated, they actually see this as a viable option. The viable option is fix the business and keep the bloody thing, build a cash cow that brings in semi passive income, right? So that's a kind of third type of buyer. The two obvious ones are number one is the trade buyer, right? I've deliberately left out investors here because for most of us, the small business, we don't really get investors coming in. That's for the bigger boys, right? So I've deliberately left out the investors, but of course, it still potentially is a buying option. But for most of us in business, it's the traditional trade buyer. Now, that could be a direct or an indirect competitor, right? There's big risks here, though. And I want to just make sure everybody's well aware of these risks. When you're selling your business, right, whether you're doing it confidentially or on the open market with the full name out there, right, you've got to be very careful how much information you start to give over, especially if it's a direct competitor. And I always say in the early stages, you don't give anything away that's not in the public domain in the early stages. There's two things I want to hammer home. I'm going off a wee bit topic here, but there's two things I want to hammer home, right? When you are having negotiations with anybody. Number one is heads of terms. You want to get heads of terms agreed as quickly as you possibly can. Now, a lot of people disagree with that, but you want to get the heads of terms. Heads of terms is not legally binding to either party, but it shows intent. It shows desire, right? All going well, we intend to sell the business for this, with this, over this period of time. And like I say, the heads of terms are outlined. Not a legally binding thing, but any matter means, but it shows intent. The second thing is proof of funds. And I just shake my head and people, oh, I don't want to ask for that early on. Jesus Christ, you want to ask for that early on, right? Because this reads out the £1 challenge. If you're selling a business for £1 million, you want to make damn sure that that person, company, whatever it is, has got access to those funds, right? So that's a letter from the bank and the finance company, whatever it might be, saying the funds will or are available. You want to get those things done early on. So let's go back to the trade buyer. It's a direct or an indirect competitor. NDAs. I mean, honestly, you know, yes, of course you get your NDA signed, but do not think for 1 second that's full protection. It's not, right? Because even with an NDA, once it's in their head, it's in their head. And if that deal doesn't go through, you have potentially given this person all your secret sauce, right? So just be very mindful here. There's a lot to consider. Indirect competitors. So if you're a kitchen company in Inverness, an indirect competitor might be a kitchen company in Perth, right? Or Birmingham, Manchester for an English audience. So they're not a direct competitor. They're wanting to expand geographically. That's nice, right? So that's direct and indirect competitors. You might also find that it's a business, a trade buyer that's in a similar industry. So I saw this quite recently with a car business, right? What they did was car servicing, MOTs. So they have got that automotive database. And they then bought a really high-end car valeting and detailing business. Guess what? It's the same customers, right? So all these things are considerations. That's your trade buyer. That's the most popular. That's number one. Number two, we talked about. That's the lifestyle buyers. And we're starting to see them really, really increase, right? Lifestyle buyers are less interested in sort of profit and loss. Obviously, it's a factor, but the big, big thing for them is, as the name suggests, lifestyle. And they will quite often sacrifice turnover, profit, size, scale. They'll sacrifice that for lifestyle. So these are people leaving the corporate world. They perhaps have got a nice little nest egg. They just want to top it up. They're maybe 10 years away from retirement. They just want to top it up, right? So be mindful of lifestyle buyers. Every business is sellable. Every business is sellable. Single owner businesses, totally sellable. It's how you
It's just a
present it for
question of
sale.
at what price, isn't it?
It's at what price and how you prepare it for sale, Paul. The other thing as well is a lot of business owners say, can I sell a business that's not making money? Yeah, you can actually, because we've got to look into why the business is not making money. Is it because your cost base is ridiculous out of control? Your systems, your processes are grossly inefficient. What is unprofitable turnover for you could be a highly profitable turnover for somebody else, especially if it's an asset sale. So there's the three types of buyers that I tend to see coming up. Trade buyers are the obvious one, lifestyle buyers, and then we've got our £1 Charlies you've got to avoid at all costs.
And presumably, in your dealings, you've had some really good success stories, have you, Stuart?
Um, there's been some really good success stories and a couple of ongoing as well. Um, so I I actually think, to be brutally honest, Paul, the best success story is the business that never exited. Another printing business. It'd been up for sale for about 5 years, right? It couldn't sell because it wasn't sellable for all the stuff we've mentioned before. So the problems are all identified, put in place. The business owner, skeptically, I have to say at the start, started to fix all these problems, issues, what do you want to call them, right? And as that journey progressed, the profits returned, the business grew, the team started running the business. He wasn't needed for any more than 2 to 3 days a week. The business was, his words, fun again, right? And starting to bring in a semi-passive income, right? Why would you sell that? And the answer is, well, I'm not going to sell that, right? Now, he will sell that, but now maybe another 5 or 6 years' time, right? And the business will be sellable at that point. So my biggest success is actually getting a business like that, where you've got something that has got, I wouldn't say zero value, it wasn't as bad as that, but definitely a low value. It wasn't selling and completely turned that around. Because we didn't just turn the business around, turned his complete life around as well. And every business can do that.
It seems to me that a lot of this is down to mindset. And if you want to improve, you will improve. If you're happy being a martyr where you are at the moment and everything falling apart and everything dependent on you, then you won't actually do anything, will you?
No.
It's down to mindset because, and also people do things for two reasons, either for gain or to avoid pain. If the pain is so raw, so intense at the moment, you will do something about it. Or if the fact that your gain is that you want to retire or you want to move abroad or whatever it is you want to do, is that you will actually do these things. I think, in my experience, from my personal experience, is that in Christmas 2000, I had meningitis. So I was in hospital for a month and I had to come back and make some sacrifices, make some decisions. And one of those decisions was that the doctors told me that even though 25% of people carry the meningitis bacteria, you're not necessarily, just because you're a carrier, you don't necessarily get get
Mm.
meningitis. That if I didn't cut my hours, then I could be back there again. So it forced me to actually make some decisions in terms of letting people go, reducing my staff numbers. And it's quite surprising that actually, with a lesser number of clients, with a lower number of team members, my profits went up. And
Another
you know,
business owner paradox.
and actually, if you have time to think about things, like you're thinking about selling your business, you put in place a plan to achieve what your desired number is, then you can work to the plan. And I think one of the things for me, for most businesses, they need to work out what is the end date. When do they want to actually leave? And then
Yeah.
we also work backwards. Then we work out what we're going to put in place to actually achieve that. Um, if someone wanted to get hold of you, Stuart, they can obviously find you on LinkedIn. They could reach out to you. You're all over social media, aren't you?
Yes, they can reach out through LinkedIn, or perhaps through you as well. Um, just one other thing, Paul, it's maybe worth mentioning here actually. Um, when you're looking at preparing the business, this is going back to the steps that you take to prepare your business. There's three very simple methods you can use here, and it's quite well known in coaching terms, and you'll hear people talk about stop, start, and continue, right? And this is very applicable when you're looking to start your exit plan, which could take a couple of years, remember. You look at all the stuff that you're doing, you think, right, I need to stop this. That's just stop list, right? And business is too dependent on me. It's untidy financials. We need to stop this. And then you then that move over and think, okay, here's the stuff we need to start. We need to start doing this. We need to start giving our team better ownership. We need to have start building better systems. So you got your stop, your start, and your continue. And the continue is this is working okay. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So for business owners looking to start the journey, stop, start, continue is a great way to do it. A very simple, easy method to start. But remember, an exit plan can take 2 to 3 years. Because you talked, Paul, about knowing what the end date is, right? The end date's not quite as clear as a lot of people think, because the end date for me is when you walk out for the very last time. That's your end date. Leading up to that end date, you may have, and I strongly advise against it, but you may have an earn out period. You'll certainly have a handover period, which could be 6, 9, or 12 months, right? And you've also got the due diligence process, right? So you've got to factor though in the legalities. That could potentially take 6 months plus. So you've got to make sure that when you've got your end date in sight, it's not just getting the business ready, it's about due diligence, legals, and then handover as well. Got to be very realistic. And that's something I'm quite happy to go through anybody with so that they're clear on when the exit date is.
Is there anything you think we've missed out on, Stuart, that you would want to add?
I don't think so, Paul. We've covered pretty much everything. Um, the only thing I would add is if you're considering exiting your business, short, medium, long term, start off with the free valuation. And I'll give you the link for this, Paul.
Okay.
Very simple, very basic, very approximate. I've got to stress that. That's going to give you the ballpark figure. Then we'll do the full valuation. And once you've got the full valuation, then we'll do a one-to-one to break it all down, right? And then and only then will you be in a position to decide whether exit is still on your radar or not. And there's no charge for any of that, right? But it's very, very important to do it in that order.
No problem at all. So finally, I would like to thank you, Stuart, for being my guest on today's Meet the Author. I've really enjoyed myself. And for those of you who haven't got a copy of Stuart's first book, I would suggest to you it's a definite read for you. And it is really an exciting journey. And as you'll have seen from Stuart's conversation, Stuart says it as it is. He doesn't tend to dress it up. And his second book, which we've been talking about today, Go to Sell, is also a really good read. Even if you're not really thinking of selling your business at the moment, um, as I was always taught, proper planning prevents piss poor performance. So basically, if we could if you have an end date that you might want to sell in 10 years' time, and I think, as Michael Gerber says, most people actually start a business to actually sell it, then actually that is your end game. And preparation is key, and preparation is anything, everything. So thank you, Stuart. Wonderful to meet with you again today, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Paul. I hope that's been helpful. And if anyone's got any questions at all, reach out to me. LinkedIn's the best way to do it.
No problem. Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks, Paul.